A very warm welcome to Oxpoon, the technical magazine with Wolfgang Rudolph. Hello and welcome. Our world is getting more and more complicated, and we always need more knowledge to survive, or to live better. And this knowledge has to be applied, therefore we need people who have ideas and bring a lot of intellect with them. And we need devices, measuring devices, which help us to understand our environment. Our senses can't capture everything, that's why we need aid. Laboratory technology, that's our theme today. I have had a look at some things, and laboratory technique sounds a little sterile, but that is also a theme. How sterile is the air? What sorts of pollutants do we have in the air? Can we measure these pollutions in the air at all? How can we classify these pollutions? How do I get them out of the air? How do I collect them? Well, there are things, collectors, which take the pollutions out of the air and collect them, and when we have collected them, we have to know how many pollutants do we have in there, and how do we identify them. We have to be able to count them. Also for this there is simple devices which work very efficiently, and then we have something else, a theme which sounds a little hard to understand. Viscosity. Viscosity, what is that exactly? If you go back to the roots of the word, it has something to do with mistletoe. The viscus is a plant which they used to make glue from. Bird glue, maybe you know that. Okay, they used to mix pear juice and plum juice to it so that it was really sticky, and then the branches smeared with it. The birds landed on it and stayed stuck to it, and then they were ate. So that bad it isn't anymore. But unfortunately yes, in some areas. This viscosity means to say sticky. For what do we need it? When you bake a cake, you know that the dough is too thin, it won't work. It has to have a certain amount of viscosity. Or maybe a better example, cars. You need in a car different sorts of oil. For example, engine oil. Engine oil has to have a certain amount of viscosity. For years there was a single grade oil. Single grade means they were classified as winter oil or summer oil. That means in autumn you made an oil change to winter oil, and then in the spring back to summer oil. The summer oil had to be thicker because in summer it would get hotter, and it wouldn't have lubricated if it wasn't thicker. In the winter it hadn't to be so solid that it prevents the motor from turning. So those times are over. We have today more range oils. They're called, for example, 10 to 40. We say 1040, but it means 240. And they cover both ranges. But how do we know what viscosity they really have? How do we test that? How do we take that? It is not only with oils, but also with gases, for example, that we have to measure it. And for this there are lots of different types of viscosity measurers. And I have taken a look at a rotation viscometer, but now we will stop talking and we can take a look at the devices. The rotation viscometer RVI 2 from PCE is a viscometer with a principle what you find a lot. A disc, a spindle is immersed into a liquid, and it is then turned, and as you probably know yourself, when you stir up your coffee, you need less strength as when you stir up a pea soup, because it is thicker. And exactly the same when the spindle is in the liquid. The thickness breaks the disc. The spindle, which is so to say a sensor, and then you measure the torque from the spindle. How hard it is decelerated, up to 1%. There are different types, either from 3 to 2 million Pascal per second, or from 20 to 13 million Pascal per second. Simultaneously is the temperature measured with the temperature probe. This is important because with the temperature the viscosity changes. Different types of spindle are delivered with it for different measuring areas. With these it is very simple, the different viscosities or the different liquids to determine. Simply in the measuring vessel, testing vessel, which must have a certain geometric construction, that you can calculate and to submerge, and then you start the program. And on the display are different parameters set. You can put a start delay into it, set the duration, and so forth. And at the end, the result is shown. You can also, with the delivered software onto the PC, evaluate and the data is transferred. Or I can print it out and protocol it yearly. The purity of our air is an important feature for us, but we can't see what sorts of germs are flying around, what flies around up there. But we have to determine it, not only to stay healthy, not only to determine pollutants, but also in the production of durables area, in sterile rooms. I have always asked myself, how do I make sure that it is sterile in these rooms, and that only a certain amount of particles are in the air? For this there is, from PCE, the AS1, a measuring instrument that sucks the air into it, and is sucked in air. You can see the quantity from 10 to 6,000 liters. It is then directed over a petri dish, and the particles are collected. And later the particles have to be determined, but at the moment it is only to do with the collecting. So let us have a look at the device. It looks a little futuristic, like a modern coffee machine, Anili said. But you can take off the head at the top, then you can see the area where the petri dish is inserted, and then you can put a connection onto the top to put an air pipe onto it to suck air from anywhere. So now when I set the quantity of air it sucks in, you know when it is ready, how many particles are in the air. It is battery operated and is for 15 hours ready to use. It also has 99 memories for setups and can save 2000 measuring values. With this you can in a laboratory very simply evaluate and determine how clean our air is. When I have collected my germs out of the air from somewhere, then I have to determine how many are there. Then I take my petri dish and put it onto, for example, my germ counter. That is this device, and consists of a ground plate and a lit up area in the middle, and a large lit up 7-section display. That is really a counter, and I can remember what I counted with it. The pin has at the front a contact, and I can with it the germs, bacteria or what I will touch, and count always with it a step upwards. And can determine quickly on what sort of a surface or how many and what sort of germs. When I've done that, you usually do this at least 2 times, just to see if you have counted wrong or so. And there shouldn't be more than 300 germs in one measuring area, or it will be too much for us. But then I have an exact result, and I can say how many germs I have on my probe in a certain area, and what sort of a size I have. So a germ counter which belongs to it, and when for example I've collected germs out of the air, value it out here, I become a proper result with which I can work with. A look into the everyday life of a laboratory, there where lots of people are working for our health, for our continued development, for our technique, and so forth, and they need these devices, not only but lots more, but also these devices which I could show you. Just a look at the rotation viscometer, RVI 1, 2. That is the device that I can determine the toughness of a fluid simply by dipping the spindle into the probe and later very easily read which viscosity by which temperature I have. Then the air germ collector, the device which sucks the air into it, and this over the petri dish gives the germs out of the air, stay stuck, the air goes on. I can set the air quantity that is to be sucked in and can see how much the contamination per cubic meter is. And this air quantity collector, the AS1 from PCE, when I have the probe, then I have to evaluate it, and then I take the PCE CC1. And this CC1 is actually a lit up display which we can see here, and I can see the single particles and count them with a magnifying glass with 5 or 10 times enlargement, and then when I have counted them, how many portions of dirt, bacteria or whatever I have counted, because the counter helps me to evaluate it. So a little insight into the technique, what is around us, what we don't always see but is important, not only in work or in laboratories, but in schools are such devices important.
Auch in der Schule, in der Ausbildung sind solche Geräte wichtig.